Welcome. What you are about to watch is not science fiction, and it is not folklore. It is a serious investigation into one of history's most compelling unresolved questions, the mystery of Angkor Wat, when the gods abandoned the world's largest city. Across the world, in universities, research institutes, and field excavations, serious scholars are wrestling with evidence that does not fit the accepted story. Evidence that has been documented, measured, and peer-reviewed, and that still has no satisfying conventional explanation. We are going to look at that evidence carefully, without prejudice in either direction, not dismissing what is extraordinary, but not accepting it without scrutiny either. The truth, as always, is in the details. In 1400 AD, Angkor was the largest city on Earth. 1 million people lived within its 400 square kilometer urban sprawl. Over 1,000 temples rose above the jungle canopy. An engineering marvel of reservoirs, canals, and distribution channels supplied water to the entire population through the dry season and drained it during the monsoon floods. The Khmer Empire it housed had endured for 5 centuries and built Angkor Wat, the largest religious monument ever constructed, in just 37 years. Within 50 years, the city was abandoned. The jungle moved in so quickly and so completely that by the time French naturalist Henri Mouhot reached it in 1860, local people could not tell him who had built it. The stone towers were wrapped in strangler figs. The hydraulic system that had made a million-person city possible had collapsed into silted ruins. Mouhot wrote that it was grander than anything left by the Greeks or Romans. He was right. What destroyed it? A Thai invasion, a hydraulic engineering failure, or a climate system pushed beyond its limits by the demands of the largest city on the planet? The answer, uncovered by a decade of LiDAR scanning and tree ring analysis, is more surprising than any single cause. This is where our investigation begins. Stay with us, because the further we go into the evidence, the more extraordinary it becomes. The story you think you know is only the surface. Beneath it lies something far more remarkable. Let us begin. Before we examine the specific evidence, we need to step back and understand the context. This case does not exist in isolation. It sits within the broader phenomenon of lost civilizations, and to properly evaluate what we are looking at, we need to understand the broader picture that surrounds it. For as long as human beings have told stories, they have told stories about what was lost. Every great culture on Earth carries myths of a golden age, a time before the current order, when civilization stood taller, knew more, and reached further than anything that came after. For centuries, scholars categorized these stories as allegory, comforting fictions invented by cultures to explain the gap between their aspirations and their achievements. But a quiet revolution in archaeology, geology, and oceanography has changed that calculus. The evidence now accumulating from seafloors, ice cores, and ancient texts is demanding a fundamental revision of the human story, one in which the line between myth and memory is far thinner than we imagined. The conventional timeline of civilization holds that complex urban society first emerged in Mesopotamia around 3500 BC. Before that, scattered farming villages, nomadic hunter-gatherers, and nothing more. But this tidy narrative has been challenged repeatedly by anomalous discoveries that do not fit the accepted sequence. Megalithic structures dated to 10,000 BC or earlier. Astronomical alignments encoded in monuments by cultures supposedly too primitive to understand the sky. Mathematical ratios embedded in architecture that would not be formally derived for thousands of years. These discoveries are not fringe fabrications. They are measured, published, and debated in peer-reviewed literature. They point toward a past far more complex than the textbooks describe. What happens when a civilization falls? Most of its knowledge disappears. The libraries burn, the engineers die, the farmers abandon the fields. Within a generation or two, the grandchildren of architects are living in the ruins of buildings they cannot build. We know this happened in the Bronze Age collapse of 1200 BC, when a networked civilization spanning the Mediterranean was destroyed in a matter of decades. We know it from the fall of Rome. History is not a steady march of progress. It is punctuated by catastrophic resets, after which humanity must begin again. The question is whether some of those resets happened far earlier than we know, and whether their traces are still waiting to be found beneath our feet. This context matters because it tells us something important. What we are about to investigate is not an isolated curiosity. It is part of a pattern that researchers in multiple fields have been independently documenting for decades. And patterns in science demand explanation. With that foundation in place, let us now turn to the specific case at hand. Now we reach the heart of the matter, the core evidence surrounding Angkor Wat. When the gods abandoned the world's largest city is more extensive, more verified, and more troubling for conventional explanations than most people realize. Let us walk through it systematically, fact by fact, and allow the evidence to speak for itself. We are not going to speculate here. Every point that follows is documented in peer-reviewed publications, official archaeological records, or government archives that are publicly accessible. The question is not whether these facts are real. The question is what they mean. Consider this first extraordinary detail. Angkor Wat was constructed between 1113 and 1150 AD under King Suryavarman II as a temple dedicated to the Hindu god Vishnu, intended to represent the sacred Mount Meru. Covering approximately 400 acres, including its moat, it remains the largest religious monument ever built. The temple was constructed from an estimated 5 to 10 million sandstone blocks, some weighing up to 1.5 tons, quarried from Phnom Kulen Mountain 40 kilometers away and transported by raft and canal. This single data point, if taken in isolation, might be set aside. Anomalies happen, instruments malfunction, researchers make mistakes. But as we continue, you will see that this is not an isolated anomaly. It is part of a consistent and documented pattern. But that is only the beginning. Researchers also discovered the Khmer Empire at its peak under Jayavarman VII in the late 12th century controlled most of mainland Southeast Asia, including modern Cambodia, Thailand, Laos, and southern Vietnam. Angkor served as its capital from the 9th century until the 15th, with the urban area expanding to cover approximately 1,000 square kilometers, a metropolitan footprint larger than modern Los Angeles. The city's population of approximately 1 million made it by far the largest pre-industrial urban settlement ever discovered. Now, a skeptic might propose an alternative explanation for this, and that is entirely reasonable. We should always test alternative explanations before accepting extraordinary ones. The problem is that the alternative explanations, when examined carefully, create more problems than they solve. The mystery deepens when we examine. Angkor's water management system was the infrastructure that made a million-person city in a monsoon climate possible. Two massive reservoirs, the West Baray and East Baray, each held tens of millions of cubic meters of water, fed by a network of canals drawing from the Siem Reap River. The system allowed multiple rice crops per year during the dry season, supporting the agricultural surplus needed to feed the city. Roland Fletcher of the University of Sydney's Greater Angkor Project has spent 2 decades documenting its extraordinary complexity. This is where the conventional account begins to strain. Each individual fact might be dismissed or minimized in isolation. But the cumulative weight of the evidence is another matter entirely. Perhaps most remarkable of all, LiDAR aerial survey conducted in 2012 by the Greater Angkor Project revealed the full extent of Angkor's urban fabric for the first time, mapping roads, ponds, mounds, and residential features across an area far larger than previously mapped. The survey found evidence of extensive unplanned suburban expansion around the formal temple precincts, suggesting rapid population growth that eventually outpaced the city's planned infrastructure and stressed the hydraulic system beyond its original design capacity. Researchers who have examined this evidence have described it as genuinely difficult to explain within the accepted framework. These are not fringe commentators. They are credentialed academics publishing in mainstream journals, raising questions that the field has not yet satisfactorily answered. Then there is the matter of Thai military forces from the Kingdom of Ayutthaya sacked Angkor in 1431, capturing the Khmer capital and reportedly carrying off the entire royal court. This event, documented in Thai chronicles, is often cited as the decisive blow that ended Angkor as a political center. However, archaeological evidence suggests the hydraulic system was already failing before 1431, and that the population had been declining for decades, indicating that the Thai invasion was a coup de grace rather than a primary cause. What makes this particularly significant is its independence from the previous points. This is not a case of one theory requiring another. These are separate lines of evidence converging on the same uncomfortable conclusion. Adding to the enigma is this finding: tree ring records from teak trees across Southeast Asia, analyzed by Brendan Buckley of Columbia University's Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory, revealed evidence of severe multi-decade droughts between 1362 and 1392 AD, and between 1415 and 1440 AD, punctuated by extreme monsoon floods. This climate variability, droughts drying out the reservoirs, followed by floods overwhelming the drainage canals, would have created exactly the combination of stresses needed to push a hydraulic system already strained by overexpansion into irreversible failure. Taken together, these facts form a pattern that cannot be explained by coincidence, misidentification, or methodological error. Each piece of evidence has been examined by skeptics. Each has been subjected to alternative explanations, and in each case, the alternative explanation falls short of accounting for everything that has been documented. We are left with a body of evidence that demands explanation and an accepted narrative that does not provide one. This is where serious inquiry begins. Now that we have established the evidence, we need to examine the theories that researchers have proposed to explain Angkor Wat, when the gods abandoned the world's largest city. This is where the debate becomes most intense, because the theories reflect not just different interpretations of the same evidence, but fundamentally different assumptions about what is possible and what the past looked like. Understanding these theories is not just an academic exercise. Each one has been championed by serious researchers with genuine credentials, and each one captures something that the others miss. The truth, if it is ever established, will likely draw on elements of several. The first major explanation proposed by researchers holds that Roland Fletcher of the University of Sydney argues that Angkor's hydraulic system, the most elaborate pre-industrial water management infrastructure ever built, became so complex and so dependent on continuous maintenance that it entered a state of irreversible decline once population pressure and management capacity diverged. Canal blockages became self-reinforcing. Sediment built up, channels failed, agricultural output dropped, population declined, and fewer workers were available to maintain the system. The main objection is the difficulty of distinguishing infrastructure failure from its causes. This interpretation has significant academic support and is backed by substantial evidence, but it is not without problems. Critics point out that it requires assumptions that go beyond what the evidence strictly supports, and that key predictions of this theory have not been confirmed by subsequent research. It remains contested, and the contest is productive. A rival school of thought argues that historians of mainland Southeast Asia, including Michael Vickery, emphasize the Thai military invasions as the primary driver of Angkor's abandonment, arguing that the repeated Ayutthayan attacks between 1369 and 1431 disrupted the administrative capacity needed to maintain the hydraulic system. On this model, infrastructure collapse followed from political collapse rather than preceding it. The objection is that hydraulic deterioration appears in the archaeological record before the major Thai incursions. This theory is controversial, and deliberately so. Its proponents argue that the evidence demands an explanation, outside the conventional framework. Critics counter that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and that the evidence presented, while suggestive, does not yet meet that standard. The debate continues in peer-reviewed literature. Perhaps the most unconventional theory suggests that Brendan Buckley and colleagues at Columbia University argue that monsoon variability, alternating severe droughts and catastrophic floods reconstructed from tree ring and speleothem records, overloaded Angkor's water infrastructure in the late 14th and early 15th centuries. Droughts emptied the reservoirs while flood episodes breached the embankments, and the combination was too extreme for even a well-managed system to survive. The objection is that the Khmer had managed monsoon variability successfully for 5 centuries before the terminal collapse. What is striking about this debate is not merely that experts disagree. That is normal and healthy in science. What is striking is the quality of the disagreement. Serious researchers, working from the same body of evidence, reaching genuinely different conclusions. That level of fundamental disagreement, when it persists over decades, is a signal that something important has not yet been understood. The question is not which of these theories is right. The question is whether any of them is right, or whether the truth is something that none of the current frameworks has yet been able to capture. The case surrounding Angkor Wat, when the gods abandoned the world's largest city, does not rest on speculation alone. What distinguishes this investigation from pure mythology is the existence of documented, physical, verifiable evidence, material that has been examined by credentialed researchers and whose authenticity is not seriously disputed. What is disputed is its interpretation. Let us review the most significant documented evidence as objectively as possible. We are not going to cherry-pick the data that supports a preferred conclusion. We are going to lay out what exists and let you draw your own assessment. Physical evidence supporting this account includes LiDAR data collected by the Greater Angkor Project in 2012 and expanded in subsequent seasons revealed, for the first time, the full extent of Angkor's residential and agricultural landscape, including a dense network of suburban housing mounds, reservoir embankments, and canal channels across an area of approximately 1,000 square kilometers. The data also showed evidence of emergency modifications to the northern canal system, hasty repair work, indicating the hydraulic engineers were actively fighting a system under severe stress before final abandonment. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Investigators have documented hydraulic engineering analysis of Angkor's canal and reservoir system, published by Fletcher and colleagues in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in 2008, documented multiple phases of emergency modification and repair to the northern and western canal networks, consistent with repeated hydraulic failure. Sediment cores from the West Barre Reservoir show abrupt changes in deposition rates indicating catastrophic flood events followed by periods of very low water, consistent with the climate record from Buckley's tree ring analysis. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. On-site analysis revealed tree ring records from teak forests across Southeast Asia, published by Brendan Buckley in 2010 in Climate Dynamics, reconstructed annual monsoon rainfall from 1250 to 2008 AD, and identified unprecedented drought episodes in 1362 to 1392 and 1415 to 1440 AD. These dates bracket Angkor's period of abandonment precisely. The same record shows extreme flood years interrupting the droughts, consistent with the emergency flood damage visible in the archaeological modification of Angkor's canals. This evidence has been subjected to independent verification. Skeptics have examined it. Alternative explanations have been proposed and tested. The data remains. The question of what it means remains open. Each individual piece of evidence might, in principle, be explained away. A single anomalous artifact might be misidentified. A single anomalous date might reflect contamination. A single anomalous eyewitness account might reflect misperception. The question is whether all of the evidence can be explained away, and whether the explanations required are more or less plausible than the evidence itself. When multiple independent lines of inquiry converge on the same conclusion, that convergence is the most powerful signal in empirical science. And that is exactly what we are seeing here. We have examined the history, the evidence, and the theories surrounding Angkor Wat, when the gods abandoned the world's largest city. Now we need to ask the question that is sometimes overlooked in discussions of ancient mysteries. Why does this matter? What does it mean for us today? It would be easy to file this away as an interesting historical curiosity, a puzzle from a distant past with no bearing on our present lives. That would be a fundamental mistake. The questions raised by this case touch on issues that are directly relevant to who we are, where we came from, and what the human story actually looks like before the period covered by conventional history. The Greater Angkor Project's LiDAR surveys between 2012 and 2022 have produced the most complete picture of a pre-industrial megacity ever assembled, revealing Angkor as a settlement of extraordinary scale and complexity. The hydraulic failure hypothesis now commands broad scholarly consensus, supported by both archaeological and paleoclimate evidence. Angkor Wat itself survived abandonment as an active Buddhist monastery and is the best preserved of the 1,000 temples. It is now Cambodia's primary tourist destination and the subject of major conservation concern. The 3 million annual visitors it attracted before the pandemic were causing measurable damage to the sandstone, and groundwater extraction by the surrounding city of Siem Reap threatens the stability of the temple foundations. Furthermore, the tools available to investigate these questions are advancing rapidly. Satellite imaging, ground-penetrating radar, ancient DNA analysis, isotopic tracing, and deep-sea sonar are all providing capabilities that previous generations of researchers could only dream of. Cases that were genuinely unresolvable 10 years ago are now open to new analysis, and the findings, consistently, are expanding rather than contracting the mystery. The investigation continues. New discoveries are being made. New analyses are being published. New voices are entering the conversation from disciplines that were not previously part of the discussion. The answers, when they come, and they will come, will not merely solve a historical puzzle. They will force a fundamental revision of assumptions that underpin our entire understanding of human history and human potential. We have now walked through the complete case of Angkor Wat, when the gods abandoned the world's largest city, from the historical record, through the physical evidence, across the competing theories, and into the modern significance of what remains unresolved. What the story of Angkor Wat ultimately reveals is not just a historical puzzle. It is a mirror. It reflects our assumptions back at us, our assumptions about what ancient people were capable of, about how knowledge is gained and lost across the centuries, and about the relationship between what we know and what we merely think we know. The evidence presented in this documentary is real. The questions it raises are genuine. The debate among researchers is ongoing, and that is healthy. Science is not a set of conclusions. It is a process, and the process requires that we remain open to evidence that challenges what we thought we knew, however uncomfortable that challenge might be. If you came to this documentary as a skeptic, we hope the evidence gave you something to think about. If you came as a true believer, we hope the critical examination gave you a more nuanced picture. The truth, as always, lies in the evidence, not in what we want to be true. Thank you for watching. If this investigation sparked your curiosity, please subscribe to the channel. We publish new documentaries every week, covering the full range of historical mysteries that the mainstream has not yet adequately explained. Leave a comment below telling us which case you want us to investigate next. The conversation continues. The investigation never ends.